What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Sylvester Stimley, also known as Sly. Welcome back to Keeping It Kingdom. We're here. It's not just the same, it's a lifestyle. As you notice, today I am rolling solo, but not completely solo. I got my baby girl in the studio. She's over there reading the book, and I'm here with Mr. Robbie in the building. Y'all might hear him chime in a little bit, but today, I would really say, as you are listening to this, as you're watching this, my prayer is that you hear God speaking directly to you. There is some topics I'm gonna unpack today, Mr. Robbie, that some of these conversations me and you have had. I've had these conversations in some of our discipleship groups. We're going to be talking today just a little bit about the pruning process, a little bit about leadership. You know, we went to a conference not too long ago that was fire. Dr. Conway, he did some leadership training. I think it was the last day. That was gold. And so we might dive into a little of that. But I want to start off by reading this verse that I've been wrestling with in James 3. James chapter 3 verse 1. Now, if you have your physical Bibles, if you're hopefully you might be driving, you might be at work, you might be at lunch break, you might be in school, might be a student, who knows? What I'm gonna say is here at Keeping the Kingdom, it starts with having a kingdom mindset that leads to kingdom connections that create a kingdom relationship that turns into a kingdom impact. So I always want you to have your word to fact check me. Let's stay in the book, okay? That's the kingdom mindset. And so if you don't have a physical copy, maybe you can use your digital copy. So let's read this real quick. And we're going to be in the book quite a bit today. So just be prepared. We're gonna be flipping the pages. So it says, I'm reading for the New Living Translations. Dear brothers and sisters, let's stop there. That's me and you. That's us. Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church. Oh, man. We like 30 seconds in? We're going to be talking about the pruning process. And I had to go through a very thorough pruning process to get to a place where I was given an opportunity, a privilege to serve, to lead, to be a shepherd, to pastor. And I think we should slow down sometimes and yield and allow the pruning process to take place. So check this out. He says, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Let's stop there. And then it says period. So stop. Remember, we have to give space for the grammar. Like there was a comma, and then it says, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Period. For those of us that are in these roles as small group leaders, as and age does not matter, right? Because you can be helping oversee or steward others in the church. But remember, we are the church, so even outside of the building, this is saying that we will be judged more strictly. Key word in there is more. So if we're going to step into a space where we say, sign me up, I want to be one who teaches God's word, who teaches God's people, then we have to also understand that there is a responsibility. So your responsibility to when you are using your gift, your talents, your treasures for the church, for the body, for the next generation, we will be judged more strictly by what we do and what we sow into those that will be seeing and receiving from us. That makes sense? That make sense? Then he says, indeed, we will all make many mistakes, saying that, hey, God has never called us to be perfect. He didn't call us to be perfect, but he wants us to be in alignment. Then it says, for if we could control our tongues, we would be more perfect. Excuse me. We would be, not more, excuse me. We would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. I'm not going to go on to verse 3 because it starts talking about a large horse and a bit in his mouth and just talking about controlling our tongue. Why? Because life and death is in the power of the tongue. What we say is impactful. Sometimes we just use words flippantly. We say things about ourselves or about others that can hurt. And when God calls us, especially those that are in a season where we are serving, where we are teachers, when we are working as the body to serve others, we have to be very intentional about the words that we use, because the words that we use have an influence, but they also have an impact. And so, God, let's go to the story of Joseph, right? Joseph shares about his dream, and his brothers didn't quite like it. And he goes through this pruning process. Joseph goes through, he literally goes through a pruning process, right? So he's thrown in the pit, and then he is sold into slavery. So in the pit, he's in the pit because he's rejected by those that he's related to. He never turned from God. He's then sold because they were trying to debate what they were going to do with him. He's sold into slavery, goes to work for his boss. He's then set up. Here's another part of the pruning process. He never turns from God. And when he gets there, it is said that he is seen as one that is with the Lord, like the Lord is with him. And then, after he's set up, which we can say that's we can look at that and say that's like injustice, right? In the world, we see that often, right? Someone goes to jail for something that they didn't do. Someone is blamed or accused something they didn't do. Joseph, he honored his boss, right? He never came back and tried to, be disrespectful. We don't see that in God's word. The person that set him up, all he did was flee the scene. But how often when people do things to us, we want to blast them on social media. We want to say unkind things. We want to react and respond in a way with our words or with our actions that don't honor the Lord. The Bible tells us that we must bless our enemies. Bless those that curse us. Bless those that hurt us, right? And so there's a pruning process. I think that we were able to see early on in Joseph's life that he was one who received pruning well. Being pruned on purpose, pruned with a purpose, and pruned for a purpose. Why? Because that's what it requires in order for us to have a kingdom mindset that leads to kingdom connections that turn into kingdom relationships that have a kingdom impact. Joseph had a kingdom mindset that said, I will not walk away from the calling God has on my life, nor the identity of who I am, and I will not walk away from the assignment, regardless of the trials and tribulations that we go through, because scripture tells us that we will face trials, tribulations. We will run into problems, but they're there to help us to develop endurance. Joseph had an opportunity to develop his endurance through these hard times. He was very careful with his words. Very careful with his words. And I think because of that, we're able to see that even in the midst of being thrown into prison, he goes into prison. Check this out. He goes into prison, Robbie. And what does he do for the baker and the butler? He serves them. So if we just think about this, he was unjustly punished. He could have had a posture of like, I'm going to go and march and, they threw me in jail in this wrong. No. He didn't do that. While he was there in prison. So it's almost like being, let me think about this. Let me think. Help me out, Holy Spirit. Okay. You're driving. You run a red, you run a yellow light. The car in front of you, the car behind you runs the red light. They make a right. You keep going straight. You get pulled over. You get a ticket. You're like, it was yellow. You didn't get the other car. You get the ticket. You have a choice now. How do you respond? You get pulled over. How do you respond to the officer? Let's just say you respond angry. I shouldn't have got the ticket. Officer's like, sorry, have a good day. So you go down to pay your ticket and you have an opportunity to pay the ticket. You're at the glass and there is a lady or guy that is there asking you for your insurance and all the things, right? Okay, your fine is $300, $200, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. But you notice the disposition that there's something going on. In that moment, if you were truly walking with the Lord and you understand it, the pruning season, there's seasons for pruning. We'll get into that in a second. Joseph went through multiple different seasons of situations. And the Bible continually said that he was with the Lord. He understood his assignment. What are you going to do when you have an opportunity to serve? Because in that moment, he served the baker and the butler when he was in prison, and he wasn't supposed to be there. So when things happen, when you're like, man, like God is opening up some doors, or, like, man, life seems real good. And then you get a text message, or you get a phone call, or you get laid off, or you get the ticket on the way to work and you just got a promotion the day before. How are you going to respond when God puts you in place, in proximity to somebody that you need to serve? Joseph could have been petty, but he wasn't. Why? Because pruning isn't punishment. It's for preservation. Pruning can be painful, but pruning is also promising. Pruning isn't pretty, but pruning is productive. Why? Because when you keep a kingdom mindset, it leads to kingdom connections. So let's pause right there. Let's go back to Joseph's story. Here he is sharing his dream with family. But because he had a kingdom mindset, there was a connection. His brother said, no, we're not going to do that. No. Which is a kingdom relationship. And because his brother was moved at heart, it saved Joseph's life. Had his brother not had a move in his heart, the entire family doesn't get blessed. That's the impact. That's the connection. So he had something like, we don't talk about that particular brother of all that was looking out for him. We don't talk about that enough. And because of that, it protected the pruning season for Joseph. Why do we need to prune? You know what? Let's jump into John 15. Let's just go ahead and go there. I feel like that's a good segue. Let's read this. This is just so good. John 15:1. I am the true grapevine. When you're there, say I'm there. We in the book. I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit. Whoa. That is, wow. Wow. And he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they produce even more. So here's what we saw happen in Joseph's life. He was pruned, and because of the pruning process, he was able to bear more fruit that continuously allowed him to be promoted so that he can have an impact not only for his family, but for generations to come. See, if we can endure this pruning process, there are lives that will be impacted that we won't live to see. Why? Because we are pruned on purpose. We're pruned with a purpose, and we're pruned for a purpose. What's one of those things? What's one of the purposes that we're pruned for? It's for connection, right? John 15:7-8 says this. Let's read it. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, going back to the power of word, what's in your mouth? What are you saying? If you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. When you produce much fruit, first we got to remain in him, and his words remain in us. What are you saying? What are you saying to you? What are you saying to others? Because they will only know that we are his disciples by how we love. So the question is, are the words that we're saying, are they loving? And sometimes love hurts because we have to tell each other the truth, but we can do it in love. 1 Corinthians tells us that, right? Like we can know all the things, be all the things, do all the things, but if we don't do it without love, it don't mean nothing, right? All it is a clinging symbol. So when you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. That's what he's called us to do, is to be his disciples. That is the connection. Here's the other thing is pruning is for correction. So we don't like it. We don't like correction. Nobody likes correction, right? Nobody likes correction. Let's look at this. My baby girl's like, She's like, But correction is good, right? So think of it like this. If we were going, let's say if we're going to Disneyland, right? And I have a GPS. And if the GPS never corrects the direction, we may never reach the destination. Why? Because there's times, let me give an example. Okay. There are a couple of highways close to where we're at right now. Robbie, I know you don't take the highway, but he takes the back roads. Oh, but there's actually construction over there too. But let's just say if, for those that know the DFW area, there's like a 287, 820, and 20 interchange kind of area where they kind of like it's in that area. So right now they're doing some construction. They're trying to widen the lanes and you get detoured. What if, check this out, what if I was like, man, the last time I went to Disneyland or Disney World, which one is in California? Land? Okay. All right. If I'm trying to go Disneyland, I got to take I-20 to get there. I have to hit I-20. Well, if I try to go let's say if I went prior to construction and there's other construction maybe further down going towards California, if I go based off of memory, and I didn't know that in different seasons they changed and rerouted the highway, I could end up in Houston because I did not allow correction. When we don't allow correction, we will always be misguided in our direction. Proverbs 3:12 says this, "For the Lord corrects those he loves. He loves you. He loves me. Just as the father corrects a child in whom he delights." Why? Because he doesn't want us to have to go. He corrects us because he does not want us to have to miss the destination. But so often we don't want to be corrected because we feel like the pruning process hurts. But remember, pruning, man, even though it may feel painful, it's promising. Even though pruning isn't pretty, it's productive. Even though pruning seems like it's punishment and it's not, man, it's for preservation. And so pruning is for connection. Pruning is for correction. Let me read this other verse. Proverbs 10:17. It says, "People who accept discipline are on the pathway to life." So, discipline. We want to be disciples. Everybody wants to be disciples of something, but we don't want to be disciplined with anything. So let me ask you a question, Robbie. You eat Pop-Tarts? You eat Pop-Tarts?
Occasionally.
Okay. You eat cinnamon rolls?
Occasionally.
Have you ever had a homemade cinnamon roll?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had like homemade roll, like cinnamon rolls that were like the rolls were actually homemade?
Mm-hmm.
Which one takes longer to be prepared to eat?
Definitely the homemade ones.
So if you had a choice, would you prefer having a Pop-Tart or a homemade cinnamon roll?
Homemade cinnamon roll.
Why?
Because it tastes better.
Come on, that's it?
I mean, yeah, it takes longer. It takes longer to cook or to prepare, but it's just better. It just tastes better.
So often. Go ahead.
There's something about it being, I guess, crafted rather than packaged or mass produced that makes it like a little bit more personal. Like my mom makes some really good homemade cinnamon rolls.
So she do the dough and everything,
Yeah.
and then okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, and I know we've gotten into this season of life where we always say, oh, the next generation is lazy. I think it's every generation, right? Like everybody, we want stuff quick. We've often wanted, like I think, like it wouldn't have been. It's not in the Bible just because this generation all of a sudden wanted things like this is here because this has been a repetitive thing. The Israelites, I feel like you're about to say something. Okay. The Israelites ran into this, right? I think you might even talked about this before. You like, man, right? Like they wanted. Go ahead.
Yeah. As soon as they didn't know where leadership was anymore, they wanted a new leader.
Right. What about location? You remember this part?
Go ahead.
So they settled for a shorter route, right? I'm sorry, they wanted a shorter route, right? Because they were actually, I'm sorry. Let me rewind. They wanted. They were trying to get something that was easier. That's the way I want to put it. They wanted something easier. And they wanted to go back where they were because they wanted something that was convenient. They were like, man. So they were always looking for convenience and simplicity. But when we do that, we miss out on the depth of what God has for us. And so he had to prune the Israelites in that process, all right, with time. And a lot of times we feel like, man, I just can't wait. I can't wait. No, you can, actually. Actually, you can. I think 10 out of 10, anybody that had homemade cinnamon rolls to choose from versus Pop-Tarts, you're going to get that one person, oh, I'm going to do Pop. No. Here's what I know about Pop-Tarts and about cinnamon rolls. Number one, when they are, baby girl, you good? Okay, go ahead. When it comes to cinnamon rolls, when it comes to Pop-Tarts, what I do know is a cinnamon roll has a much more longer lasting aftertaste. A cinnamon roll can fill the room with an aroma that a Pop-Tart can't. A cinnamon roll is going to have more depth and more impact to your palate than a Pop-Tart is. But in order to be able to experience that, there's a process. Making homemade dough can sometimes seem painful, but it's promising. Making the icing and going through the process of putting it in the oven, the timing to make sure you don't burn it, all those things, they're promising. A Pop-Tart is okay unheated, but you still no matter if you line them up, 10 out of 10, I'm going cinnamon roll. And what I believe is sometimes we don't want to go through the process of mixing the ingredients, right? Working with the dough. We want the shortcuts like the Israelites wanted. We want it easy. But it says people who accept discipline. So you have to be disciplined to make. Because here's the thing. I know if I try to make some cinnamon rolls, I might mess up the first batch. But I have to say, you know what? I'm willing to be pruned, which means I got to be corrected in looking at the directions. And I have to be okay. I have to discipline myself to say, you know what? In order to make this come out good, I am going to need to correct my process. People who accept discipline are on the pathway to life, but those who ignore correction will go astray. By skipping the process of making cinnamon rolls, and I'm talking about food, but you can apply this to anything in life, finances, relationships, people who accept discipline are on the pathway of life. Discipline in how you pursue somebody. What season is it? Have I done an internal audit? Have I done an external audit? Man, there's an acronym I heard, and I can't remember what it is, but like, Lord, am I in the season? Am I disciplined enough in my own walk with God that I'm ready to be in a relationship? Am I disciplined enough in my and how I honor my mother and father to be in a relationship? Because you have to steward. You got to steward you well, And you need to steward their first ministry, which is your family, before you start to pursue someone else. And that's where God got me before I met my wife. He was like, hey, I need you to make sure you're stewarding your time with me well. I need you to steward your relationship with your parents well. And then I need you to steward your friendships well before you steward or try to engage pursuing somebody. So he was like, I need you to do an audit. How are you managing those relationships, your friendships, right? So friendships, you should be friends in seasons before you move to the next process. Sometimes we plant a seed in one season, and in that same season, we want that tree. But there's a process that it has to go through. So it has to be planted. It has to be watered. Then it has to go through a growth process before it turns into a seedling that turns into a tree. But even when it's a tree, it may still not be ready for a relationship. Why? Because it has to be pruned. We as soon as we see the seedling, we're like, oh, we ready. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. Those who ignore correction will go astray. If we refuse to be pruned, it's going to be hard for us to produce good fruit. Proverbs 10:17 in the Amplified version says it this way. This is intense. He who heeds instruction and correction is not only himself in the way of life, but also in the way of the life of others. Get out the way. Move. Get out the way. Bring it back. 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 And he who neglects or refuses reproof not only himself goes astray, but also causes error and is a path toward ruin for others. Like when we don't receive correction and pruning, not only do we mess it up for ourselves, but we are messing it up for others. That's why it's better if you die to yourself, pick up your cross, follow him. Told you I was coming with this book. Here's another one. Proverbs 15:33. Look, the book is good. Like there is nothing that you will face in life that will not allow you to be able to use this at any point in any season. So like Proverbs 15:32 I'm about to read, and 10 years ago, landed in a different place based on the season I was in. Every time I read it, man, it's alive and it's active and it shows up differently in different seasons. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. You know why? Sometimes we don't have the friendships we want or the relationships we want or the mental clarity that we want, the ability to be able to walk out certain things for our life. It's because we don't have the ability to grow in understanding. Why? Because we reject discipline and we do not listen to correction.
I mean, let's compare the book with the book.
Okay.
What chapter are you in?
Proverbs 15.
Proverbs 1.
Do not. Go ahead. Don't do them like. Well, go. Yeah, do them like that.
Verse 5.
Mm-hmm.
Let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance. So you're trying to grow in understanding, but you don't want more guidance. And whenever you talk about pruning, like that branch in that tree is going to grow. But if you don't deal with something at the base, whenever you grow further, you're going to still have to deal with that thing that was there from the beginning.
Come on.
That you should have got rid of, but it's still there.
It's so good. It's so good. So just to kind of elaborate on that piece right there, Robbie, right? Let's talk about the process of pruning. When something is pruned, it helps to remove the dead, the diseased, or the injured parts of the tree. When something is pruned, it's meant to remove the dead, the diseased, or the injured part of the tree. When something is pruned, it's that's a bar right there. That is a bar. Pruning is good. Like it sounds painful, but it's not. Man, pruning is not painful. It's promising. Pruning it's not pretty, but it's productive. Like even if you look at, like I was driving out the parking lot, might have been yesterday, and when you leave, watch this. I noticed the trees out here, the yard maintenance people, whatever they're called. What are they called? Why am I drawing a blank on these people? Name.
Is it like landscape?
Landscaping people, right? So they're out there, they were out there pruning the trees out here, right? And so I was taking out the trash, and as I was rolling the trash out to the dumpster, I noticed the tree. I'm like, man, the tree, it actually looks dead, but it's not. It's actually healthier. Because when they prune it, they're removing the dead things from it so that it does not kill the tree. They're removing the disease things from it so it does not kill the tree. And they are removing the things that can injure the actual branch so that when the right season comes, it can produce a stronger, healthier, vibrant tree. And so it never looks pretty, but man, it's productive. It looks painful, but it's promising. Here's the other thing we know about pruning is that when they remove the dead, the diseased, and the injured parts, it helps to maximize the qualities of the tree. So I've never seen this real life because I'm not going to stand outside and look at the tree, but I've always wondered. There's like a tree in front of our house, and when they prune, Robbie, let's just call it season one. In season one, the branch may be, I'm just going to just make up a millimeter. It might be like 2 inches round. If they continue to prune that in season 5, that branch is now 10 inches round. Why? Because they removed the dead things, they removed the diseased things, and they removed the injured things that could have kept it from growing. What they did was they corrected and they disciplined the tree so that it could grow. Removing vulnerable parts of the tree will minimize the potential for pest and for damage. And pruning also encourages the growth in our lives. And there's seasons for pruning. What I didn't know, and I had to look this up, is that there are different seasons for pruning. I didn't know that, right? So, and also not all trees and plants will be pruned in the same season. So like when I'm being pruned in one area of my life doesn't mean that everybody else has to be pruned in that area, right? But we do know that God prunes us on purpose, with a purpose and for a purpose. And why? Because he wants connection with him, you know? He wants to correct us so that our path is ordered, so that our path is correct. And then the last thing is God prunes us for change. All right, here we go. Hebrews 12:11. Oh. Oh, Hebrews espresso, Hebrews Colombian coffee. We brewing some tea today. Let me before I'm gonna have to drink this because this is gonna hurt. It's better if. Yeah, that's been brewed. Okay, here we go. Rob, you ready? I feel like you about to say something. Go ahead. You say it before I say this because you already know this might hurt a little bit. Go ahead.
I'm just trying to buckle in. Because as soon as you said 12, I was like, no.
This one here is. It's interesting because it depends on what we want to be disciplined in. We will embrace the pruning process, which is strange, right? So let's read it. No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. Stop. Okay. So if I go to the gym and I haven't worked out in like years, right? First day back at the gym. I'm in the gym and I decide I'm going to get please don't do this. If you're watching this, please, I'm just going to advise that this is something you don't do. Last time you're in the gym was maybe your high school year and, you're squatting. We're just going to say the average, maybe squatting 300, right? 300, 200 pounds. You ain't worked out since you graduated and you decide, man, I'm about to go, spring break around the corner. We got to go do the thing, get in there and put you start out, you squatted 300, but you're going to put 200 on it. I'm warm up. But you haven't done anything in a while. And you get under that bar. And okay. Go down there. Like, okay, yeah, that was just hard. Maybe I just need yeah. And then you decide to go ahead and put 300 on because that's where you left off at in that season. It's already painful by putting 200 on because you haven't lifted. But then you decide that you're going to go ahead and try to pick up where you last left off. Not only is that going to be painful, but that is punishment for the wrong reason. When we walk through life without advisors, without wise counsel, without biblical wisdom, without correction, without connection from the head coach, we will find ourselves doing damage in seasons of our life that we never had to. And scripture is telling us that it's not enjoyable because it's painful. But why cause ourselves unnecessary pain when we don't have to? So what a coach would say, the trainer, we would have a conversation because we're connected. Hey, check this out. So, you hadn't worked out for a couple years now. Hey, let's just start off with some body weight squats. Oh, no. Okay, man, I almost knocked this thing over. I used to throw it around. Like, yeah, I understand. Back in your high school days, you were doing the thing. But it's been a minute. Let's take it slow. No, I don't need no trainer. Okay, all right. We don't need the book. We don't need the wisdom. That's how we get hurt. We get under the bench press, and we're like, I used to hit 225 like 10 times when I was in high school. How long ago was that? Oh, it was like 3 years ago, And we get under there and we tear a pec. We tear our tricep. Why? Because we tried to do it alone. And the trainer says, no, how about we warm up first? How about we work into it? How about we try that in another season? Right now we need to prune. Why? Because the muscles, they need to be stretched a little bit. There's some growth that needs to happen. But so often, going back to Proverbs 15, we reject that. And we only harm ourselves. You know how many times I've had conversations? No. Yeah. Come on. I know you got something. You know how many times we've had conversations? Not me and you, but just I've had conversations with people. I try to give them the wisdom that's been given to me by my mentors, and I was like, look, you don't have to go through that. You don't have to harm yourself because you reject discipline and correction. There's unnecessary pain that we go through because we reject the correction and discipline of our parents. But we also reject the discipline and the correction of our parent, and that's the father.
The way you get stronger is not by lifting more weight. Because that's to show what you can do. Right? But the way you get stronger is by doing less weight more times and breaking down your muscles.
And so what you're saying is like if I get under a bench press or a squat and I lift it one time and I hurt myself, there is no more growth.
Right.
But if I start with body weight and work my way back up.
It depends what type of damage you're looking for.
Ooh.
Because if you tear your pec or if you're squatting and you hurt your back, that could put you out for way longer.
That's good.
But the minor damage that you're doing to your muscles actively while training, that's what actually grows you.
Right.
And so like the minor things that you're trying to hold on to, because it's not even about the thing that God wants to prune from you. It's that you just don't want to be pruned at all.
That's good.
That's what keeps you from growing.
That's good. That's good. And that's so true because I remember this. What year was this? This was a long time ago. I was in the gym and I'm working this particular day. And I remember this guy was he on a decline or incline? He was on an incline bench press. He's on an incline bench press, and he had all of 300 on there. Now, he's probably, I'm just going to be generous and say 250 plus, right? Like, he is, like, massive. So the 300 looked like a snack to him, for me. Like, I'm like, he's about to eat this up. So he gets under there. I'm watching from a distance. He's pow, pow, pow. I mean, just going. I was like, interesting. Like, that looked really, really easy. I wonder if he can do that with dumbbells. See, here's something that when you got the right people in your community, they'll hold you accountable to some good boundaries. So I'm gonna exit real quick. I'm gonna come back, put a pin in that story. My best friend, Ignacio. So I'm at the gym. You know, I'm throwing up, I think like 80s or 85s, right? You know, I don't know how many I did. I wasn't that super strong, but him and another buddy of mine walk over and be like, yo, man, how you doing? It's this like we're just meeting at this point in time. Yo, like, how do you feel about some coaching? Like, because we don't want to step in and you get offended, which again, so we're talking about correction, right? And discipline. And so I was like, okay, cool. Now they were working out. Now I had not seen, so he goes over and Ignacio grabs the 120s. And he's laying on his back with his feet off the ground, feet crossed, right? Almost like you're sitting in a chair. Imagine being on your back. And he's got the 120s and he's just repping them out. And so the other friend is like, hey, do you see how his back is flat? I'm like, yeah. He's like, and And you notice how he's not using any other part of his body to press the weight. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. He's like, no, you don't. And so he's like, yeah, you're using momentum and you're using like more. You're using like your whole upper body to get it up. And so I was like, oh, I got this. Let me show you. So I get the 85s. And he's like, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my hand under your back, and I want you to push your back down on my hand and keep it there while you're pressing. So I put them on my legs, and I go back, and I get set. And I put my back, I flatten it out, and I get ready to press. And I had to dump them because I couldn't get it up. Like I was like, yeah, this ain't going to work. We out of here. I bailed out of that one. I say that to say, what I learned in that moment was some coaching. Someone identified something and said, hey, over time, you're going to end up injuring or harming yourself because you're using parts of your body to strengthen parts of your body that weren't meant to use to strengthen that part. You're not even actually activating that part. So we get back to my man that's doing the 3-something. So this is like a year later. So I was like, I wonder if he can use dumbbells. So I was like, hey man, have you ever used dumbbells? He's like, oh, I usually use bench. You know, I feel it better. I'm like, I'm telling you, like, use dumbbells, man. Like it really, like it's good because you get to come in and squeeze the top, da da da. So, Robbie, I have him get the 120s. Remember, he had 3-something on there. So not the exact same amount. So I have him do the same thing. I said, hey, when you come down, just try to keep your hand, you know. And he gets to like 5, and the arms get to shaking. Now, if you ever been around 120s, when they hit the floor, it's nothing nice. So I was like, hey, let's come down. So he was just trying. Like he just kept going. And eventually, so he was not able to do, the moral of the story, he was not able to do the same amount of weight when he did it correct. Why? Because it was painful. So he comes back the next day and he makes a beeline across the gym. And I'm like, ruh-roh. And he's like, hey, you remember me? Yeah, I remember you from yesterday. Yeah. He's like, can I get on your schedule? I was like, who you talking to? He was like, yeah, can I was like, sure. See, correction, it's not always bad. Pruning seems painful, but man, it's actually productive. Pruning isn't always pretty, but I'm telling you, Robbie, it's promising. And pruning isn't punishment. It's preservation. It's meant to preserve us, to preserve all that God has done in us.
That was something that you had learned in a previous season that you were able to pass on.
Come on. Yes.
Because someone looked out for you.
Right.
And was like, I'm not going to let him catch an L.
And you know what's wild? That same guy that taught me that is the guy that introduced me to his church where I gave my life to Christ at. So he didn't come at me. Check this out. So he served me with his gift. He didn't bring a Bible. He didn't talk about verses. He actually served me in that season, helping me to preserve my body. And it opened up a door for us to then have a kingdom connection that led to a kingdom relationship that ended up with the kingdom impact of me giving my life to Christ. You can't make this up. Let's finish reading Hebrews 12. Like we only read like 5 words. Let's. And then it says, so I'm gonna start over. No discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful. But afterward, There will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. But afterward, so that means that in the process of pruning, it's going to be painful. But afterward, there will be a harvest. Why? Because pruning is promising. Pruning is for preservation, but pruning is also productive. There will be a peaceful harvest, not a restless harvest, not a peaceless harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. Will you submit to the pruning process? So good. Let's finish on this John real quick. Robbie, I feel like you over there cooking. What you? Robbie's like he cooking. Y'all can't see this, but he is cooking. What you got? I feel like you got something.
Whenever you talked about like he served you, I was actually going to John 13:35.
Oh, come on.
Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples.
Yo, I did not know this dude was like I didn't know what I didn't know. Like he just came over just serving me, right? And we see this with Joseph. Like the baker and the butler knew that he was a disciple of Jesus because of how he served them.
Right. And your purpose in life doesn't change because our purpose is to love God, love others.
And make disciples.
Exactly. And so whenever we do those first two things well,
it's easy to make disciples. And so he serves them in the prison. This is the part that trips me out. We talk about seasons. They forgot about my man for a couple years. So he in the prison getting pruned because he could have been salty. We're going to come back to that. Actually, he could have been bitter by being betrayed. He could have been angry about being abandoned. He could have been petty for being persecuted. And then to go to the prison and serve after being forgotten about. I'm sorry. So he served and then was forgotten about. Like, hold on. Like, don't forget about your boy when you.
And he helped them get out.
He helped them get out and they forgot about him. How often have you went through that? When you're like, man, all I've done for you and you done forgot about me? And when he got out, he still wasn't petty. When he got out, he wasn't bitter. He got promoted. And then he served his family. That's what you call a heart, like one that is abiding in the Father. Because he didn't allow that to change his connection to God. He didn't allow that to extinguish his flame. He didn't allow the things that he went through to push him to put his lamp under a table or under a basket. He didn't allow the things that he walked through with family, the marketplace, like he went through it all seasons of life to where you can experience trials and problems. He did. He had relationship problems. He had workplace problems. And then even when he was in prison, he had problems. You know, he got fired. Like there's people that go to jail and never get written. There's people that go off to the military and never get a letter, never hear from their family. There's people that go to nursing homes that they get dropped off and they never hear from their family. Joseph served with a loving heart because he understood the assignment, and that is to love God, love people, make disciples. Those two men that he served could only say good things about him that was already said before, is that the Lord is with Joseph, is what scripture tells us. Every single time he's persecuted, abandoned, all that, it always said the Lord was with Joseph. Everything he touched, everywhere he went. My prayer is that we can learn from this, that pruning sometimes isn't pretty, but it's promising. And pruning is meant for preservation. His life was preserved so that he could be a blessing to his family. And if we allow the things that we walk through to damage us, it could keep us stuck. It can keep us silent, right? Just imagine if Joseph would have been in a place where his heart was hardened. He could have been silent in the prison and not even told the guys, like, hey, I know what you got. I know what you're thinking about. I can help you with that. He would have still been in prison because him not using his gift to serve could have kept him from being able to interpret the other dreams. It can keep us stuck in this hardened place of, oh, well, I've been church hurt. Or my boss falsely accused me, and so, man, you can't trust nobody. Oh, man, I was in there, and I helped them dudes out. I helped them to get jobs when they got out, and then they forgot about me. Interesting. Joseph went through several seasons because he got older as that went on. And as the seasons changed, he grew even closer to the Lord, which is why God could trust him with more. He was given authority over everything except for the food in the beginning season of his life. Now he's given authority to have control over so much more. Why? Because God could trust him because he abided, because he was connected to the Father. He was connected to the Father. He was also okay with correction. His course got correct. Like he was on course correction like all day long. It was like up, detour ahead. Like Joseph was. He could not be tied to his position, his title. Because your brother, your father's favorite, guess what? No more. How about that? Now you're working for the boss. Boss loves you, has given you authority. No more. We get too tied to titles and influence. And if we're not careful, that will keep us from being able to be pruned because we're so caught up in being recognized and getting accolades, being, number one and being the greatest of all time. Everybody wants to be great. But nobody wants to go through the pain to get there. Because if you want to be great, you got some competition. Because Jesus went through it all. And we ain't went through nothing compared to what he went through. He is the only greatest of all time. He is the MVP, the most valuable present I'm gonna finish reading this, and then we'll land this plane. Let's go to 9. I have loved you, even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love. Oh, see, that obey word is painful. We don't like that word. Just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. So Jesus is like, look, I just need you to do what I'm doing. That's it. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. So obedience brings joy? Is that what he's saying? Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because the master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends. Since I have told you everything the Father told me, you didn't choose me. I chose you. I appointed you to go, here we go, and produce lasting fruit. Not produce temporary fruit. Not produce just a little bit of fruit. Not to produce one piece of fruit. Not to produce fruit that doesn't last. It says, I appointed you to go. That means we can't stay. The same. That means we have to be pruned. And produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other. Each other. Oh. Pruning. Man, pruning isn't punishment. It's for preservation. It's to preserve us. So stay salty. Pruning can be painful, but it's promising. And pruning isn't pretty, but it's productive. And so the Lord, our God, thank you, Jesus, for pruning us on purpose, with the purpose, and for purpose. And that's for connection. And when we're connected, we have to understand that there's going to be some correction, but it's all for change so that we can produce lasting fruit. Hey, man, this has been a joy. This has been a blast. I didn't even get into some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. I know we started off with the tongue, and talking about our words. I wanted to get into some leadership stuff, but I think this is a good landing spot. We might do another solo dolo here soon. We might get into more of this leadership stuff, but I think this is leadership stuff, right? So like having a coach, having if you are a church leader, if you are a student or whoever, like it doesn't matter. I think this applies to all levels of being one who can be pruned by those that are speaking into you. Are you able to receive correction? How do you feel about if someone is saying, hey, I need you to grow yourself? Or who are you growing? Because when we do that, guess what? That's a pruning process. And so often we don't like to be in a posture to receive correction because sometimes we don't know that it's coming from a place of love because we're blind. See, when they were helping me on the bench that day, I could have rejected what they said. And it would have been a matter of time before I would injure myself. Now, they weren't my trainers. They weren't my coaches. But God sent them in a season to sow into me so that then, as I am walking in this life with this particular guy, somebody else comes along and waters, and then God does the growing, and I give my life to Christ. Who's in your life right now? Who's in your life that is sent there to help with the watering and sowing process so that God can do the growing and the pruning of your branches? My prayer is that you ask yourself that question. God, who is in my life right now that may be speaking hard truth, that's hard to receive, but really it's correction? Who's in my life right now that you have sent in this season to help me to walk through some discipline, even though it's painful? Who's in my life right now that you have placed in my life to help me to seek the kingdom first so that everything else can be added? Who is that? My prayer is that you take this, you go soak on those words, go soak on those scriptures. And my prayer is that at the end of your time with God in his word, that you can come out with a better kingdom mindset that leads to kingdom connections and kingdom relationships that allow you to have a kingdom impact to turn this world upside down, which is right side up. Listen, hey, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for spending time with me. I look forward to connecting with you next time. Don't forget, keeping the kingdom is not just the same, it's a lifestyle. Until next time, love you. See you soon. Peace.